Hi, I'm Al Lowe, and I'm listening to Adventure Game Hotspot.
Welcome back, or welcome front if it's the first time joining us. I am Joshua, YouTube's Weird Gaming Adventure. As always, up there, we have Jack Allen.
Hello.
And we have Matt today. We know Matt from Tex Murphy and a few other things. We're going to get to know him a whole lot more after this. This is the Adventure Game Hotspot podcast. Now, before we start talking to Matt and introducing him a little bit more, we're going to go into the week that was in Adventure Game Hotspot. Take it away, Jack.
Before yesterday, I thought this was going to be a really empty segment. It's a strange quirk of scheduling. We're sort of recording this podcast very soon after our last one, but I'm going to have nothing to say. And then everyone and anyone came out, like, release their game or release some major news or this, that. So, I've just been running ragged the last 2 days. So, first, big news. Cyan announced a release date for Firmament, yay, on May 18th, so we can all look forward to that. And the first trailer for Tintin Reporter Cigars of the Pharaoh landed today. I know we're really looking forward to that one, and we wanted to see more of that, so I was really happy to see that. Two big Kickstarters started today. One for a great-looking point-and-click adventure called The Adventures of Brian Scott. And Robert Holmes is back with a new musical album on Kickstarter called Son of Sequel. So very much along the lines of the last one. Sequel, of course. And then just a bunch of new releases, too. Paranorma Site, The Seven Mysteries of Hanjo by Square Enix landed this week. Fun little sort of dark fairy tale called Creepy Tale 3. And there's the whole whack of ports. I'm telling you, this is like a good time for console gamers. So there's Testament to Sherlock Holmes and Papachura and Brock the Investigator and Lucy Dreaming. You don't even need it at PC anymore to play adventure games. So.
Yeah, you know what? I was really excited to see that new Tintin trailer that came out. Have you been following any of the upcoming games, Matt?
Not as much as I like, mainly because I just recently changed jobs, and that's been definitely keeping me busy. But I have heard of the new Tintin one, and I'm super excited about that one because I was excited for more Tintin movies, and they kind of just shelved those, and I was just like, well, I gotta get Tintin somehow.
That is the voice of Matt, my friend. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody what you've been working on in the past and what you're doing now.
Okay, yes. So I'm Mat Von Rhoon. I came aboard on the Tex Murphy series first off as a fan playing the games, and then my first of the Tex Murphy games I actually became a developer on was Tesla Effect as a visual effects artist, compositor, video editor, etc. It was a many hats kind of production, being a Kickstarter with a relatively small team. And then I stuck around in the Tex Murphy community for quite some time. Was a part of the original Poison Pawn team until that was unfortunately sunset at some point. And then have been most recently working on the Pandora Directive Remaster, which we've had a few discussions about previously. But yeah, only just very recently I have departed the company of Big Finish Game on good terms, still very much connected with them and the Tex Murphy universe, but venturing onto new adventures as adventurers do.
I love it. You're an adventurer and you're going on new adventures. So give us a little bit more of what this new adventure is that you're into right now.
Sure. So I've moved over to a company called Niantic, which is most famous for their Pokemon Go. So a lot of mobile games, etc. I joined them as their new lead user experience designer. UX has been one of the things I've been extremely passionate about, and one of the things I contributed heavily towards Big Finish Games' parent company, that is the True Golf, where they worked on sports simulation, physical simulation, body tracking, augmented reality, that kind of stuff. And so, it's huge to be able to sort of work for a company, as prestigious as they are, as big as they are, as well with a franchise. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a rabid Pigo fan or a Pokemon player, but to work for a company that works on a franchise that is dear to many people's hearts, particularly close friends of mine, including myself, is definitely a new adventure, that's for sure.
Oh man, so you're the guy that I can blame for being embarrassed for when I'm actually walking with my phone out and texting. I'm embarrassed now because people are like, are you playing Pokemon Go? Like it's Mat Von Rhoon. It's this guy's fault.
I've never played it more so than I have like since starting at this company. But I'm not working on that particular project. I'm working on some of their other upcoming projects to which I don't have the ability to speak of at the moment because they're still under wraps. But yeah, I'll be working on there's quite a few good things coming from them.
Well, that's great. So that's what you're working on now. We're going to talk lots more about Tex Murphy, of course, but
Naturally.
A noticeable omission of your history is a certain game that I understand you worked on called Full Moon in San Francisco. It's going way back. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your involvement in that game.
Yeah, there's a lot of cringe there, and to be perfectly clear, the cringe is not on behalf of the developers who made the game. It's to do with my involvement. So, way back when the original Tex Murphy radio theater came out, and that was like Aaron Connors and Chris Jones's like apology offering to the community as to why Tex Murphy was sunset for so long post Microsoft acquisition. They made a radio theater, and then me and my brother decided, hey, let's make our own kind of fan radio theater. So we made one called Lombard Street, which obviously takes on after the Lombard Street ending of the Pandora Directive. And my brother voiced Tex Murphy, and I voiced a whole bunch of other things. And then this developer, I think in Canada, Alberta, they were based in, were making a game, an indie game, very small indie production of a very much Tex Murphy inspired game called Full Moon in San Francisco. And I think the game was being made in Visual Basic, just to give you sort of a general idea of like the engine that they were working in. And they had listened to Lombard Street and thought, these guys are good, and I guess they'll probably be cheaper than like the real thing.
Gettable
So would they be interested in doing some characters for Full Moon in San Francisco? So my brother, who voiced Tex Murphy in our Lombard Street fan main, ended up voicing the main character, and then a school friend of mine, she ended up voicing the female character, and of course she was terrible at an American accent, and they insisted on an American accent, and well, the rest is history. I played a few characters as well. The game was fine. I mean, it was an indie game. It was playable. It was exciting. It was an excellent effort. But looking back to some of our voice work on that, it was literally on. You remember those old like white microphones you'd get with your PC, those little arm mics, cheap ones. Like what had happened was
real high quality stuff we're talking.
Yeah, that was the mic we were commissioned to use for that project. That was actually sent out to us, one of those microphones, because so that was kind of what we were using, and the rest of the voice artists. So yeah, it was this cool little a lot of people called it kind of like an MS Paint style detective, coded all in Visual Basic, and we did some voice work for it, and I cringed immediately, and I can only imagine what I think now. I don't know if it's available on an indie archive or not. It probably is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I've got it somewhere. So I mean, like you've inspired me to pull it out and listen just for that. But so you never felt any inclination to continue with that side of things afterwards?
Oh, I'd love to get into voiceover. I'm just waiting for my voice to get like more mature and raspy before I could do that. I need my range. What I find interesting is since I've gotten into writing, and we'll get to this topic maybe later on, I don't want to monopolize with it, but since I've gotten into writing, I do a lot of read alouds of my own work, and I found that I always, like the voice I'm giving you right now, I always will stumble on sentences, but when I start to do a slight, like, what's the John Lee version of the accent with a slight British accent, it ends up, I never stumble. I can read an entire chapter without stumbling when I force an accent, and my partner at the time, she turns to me after I read a chapter and goes, "You should do that more often." And I'm like, maybe. We'll see. I mean, I was in Full Moon in San Francisco. God damn it.
Right. Come on, man. I got history.
Yes, exactly.
It's such a different world that we're living in nowadays when it comes to, you mentioned voiceovers, voice acting, or recording vocals in general. You could do it from your closet. So what kind of setup are you using today?
Well, for example, the setup I'm using today, so this microphone here, I'll sort of bring up to view. This is actually overkill for general podcasting because I was a videographer for many years. And so I bought this relatively expensive Rode NTG3, which is like a in the field shotgun microphone. I think it's like eight.
I feel a little intimidated by that thing.
I've got one in here. Yeah.
And so like it's way overkill, but I don't really use it for filming anymore. So now it's my podcasting mic. So, you know, a lot of voice actors swear by shotgun microphones because of their hypercardioid pattern. Very good for canceling out the noise. But you're exactly right. There are some, I mean, I know a really fantastic voice actor and voice producer, close friend of mine, George Ledoux, who's worked closely, you know, with Wes Johnson and a whole bunch of other people. You know, he swears by, you know, the nice home setup, like work with what you can afford.
Sure.
And just make sure it sounds good and have at least some basic editing chops, and you can be a voice actor. So I envy a lot of people wanting to get into voice acting, knowing that they have the kit to start getting into games, because I definitely want more voice act. I mean, I hate this whole AI thing that's happening at the moment. It's driving me bonkers. And I really feel for these artists and voice actors who now have to compete with that as well as each other.
Well, they have to compete with their own voice too.
It's true. Yeah.
I can make Mat Von Rhoon's voice with AI. You know, I can make you say whatever you want or whatever I want.
I recently saw a tweet by, I think it's Gemma Bain, the late John Bain's wife, and she said that one of the saddest things she's had to do is consider deleting John Bain, otherwise known as Total Biscuit, his entire library of video and voice work online, because people are using it to train things and do social commentary in his voice. And he has since passed. Like, how terrible is that she has to deal with that for her late husband?
Yeah, that's a real shame. You know, we've got this this fun little project that we're working on that we're going to be announcing pretty soon. And so I was talking with some people that do famous voice acting, like Dominic, Armato. And there goes my microphone that I pulled out to show everybody my my shotgun.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, boom, we're done. Pack it up. I was talking with Rolf. Gosh, I can't. Yeah, you help me out, Jack.
I'll just finish your sentences. You just give me enough to go on.
Both of them said that they'd happily do it but it'd be quicker if I literally just AI'd their voice and just wrote anything that I want. I'm like, interesting. So that's you're just saying okay to that. It's crazy where we're at nowadays. Just make anything you want.
You know, some voice actors will give their consent to that. I mean, I think Bruce Willis was on the, you know, an actor who said that he's going to consent to his physical appearance to live perpetually. And I think, you know, some actors and some voice actors, you know, have good intentions in offering that option for people because they want to, you know, who doesn't want to live forever? It's like the old Roman adage, you know, you want to live forever, people. But, you know, where it gets a little hairy is when it's happening without a lot of people's consent, and you know what these things are trained on, and we can have a whole other podcast on this, you know, as it is. But yeah, it's just it's touchy and it's new.
A huge topic right now. So it's such a huge thing going on.
Yeah, I had no idea it was such a big thing. Like I've been more focused on the writing element of, you know, AI is doing some relatively impressive writing too, and I'm starting to go, okay, how long till they start coming after the writers' jobs? But
which one of our staff is using
that prevalent in voice acting too? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be some accountability and some standards, and it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Well, it's probably just as well maybe you didn't pick voice acting as a career, but okay, so let's go get back into gaming here before we're all too depressed to continue. So obviously you have a great love for Tex Murphy. When did you first get to know Tex Murphy and get into gaming and all that sort of thing?
Sure. Yeah, Tex Murphy has been something that I Under Killing Moon was the very first Tex Murphy game I played. When my brother showed it to me and said, you know, this is an absolutely ruined me because we purchased the game before we even had a machine, booted it up. It's the first ever experience. And to set the bar that high, to go straight from never playing a PC game to playing one with 3D environments and full motion video kind of ruined us because a lot of the contemporaries, while being fantastic games, you know, like Seventh Guest and all those kind of things, were node-based, exploration games, pre-rendered node-based, Myst, that kind of stuff. And so to have full 3D freedom of movement was mind blowing. You know, even someone who had never experienced PC games before, that was mind blowing to me, because I went straight from Atari to Super Nintendo to Tex Murphy. So you can imagine, like, that was huge.
Yeah.
And that's how I fell in love with PC games in the Tex Murphy universe. And as I mentioned, Tex Murphy was the whole reason I opted to choose a college university path in that type of digital creation, which ultimately led to me to get jobs close-ish to it in Australia. But one thing about Australia that may still be the case, I'm not sure, Australians can probably attest to this, is it still is in its infancy in terms of being a truly out-of-the-box creative nation in terms of the video game industry and to some degree the film industry. I mean, a lot of people will say that Australians are some of the best people to work with in film and games, but you'll find that a lot of Australians will pursue their career in the US or the UK or New Zealand. They'll take their talent elsewhere. And my question is, you know, what's happening in the Australian industry? And I think it's getting better. And that's precisely why I jumped at the opportunity that when they were making Tesla Effect, I said, you guys are the entire reason I got into this in the first place. Would you like to see my portfolio? And their response was, love it. Come help us work on this game. And so I was there.
We don't even have to ask the questions. Matt just answers them before we ask them. I love it. It's almost like you've done this before. Okay, so you have worked with Tex Murphy. Literally, you worked with Tex Murphy and the game. So what is your favorite Tex Murphy game, and what is, say, Chris Jones' favorite Tex Murphy game?
Sure. I can answer both those questions with the same game, and that would be the Pandora Directive, which is why we were so excited about the remaster, which I won't jump ahead again, I promise. But
there's
yeah.
a remaster? Oh.
But yeah, it was huge. So Under a Killing Moon was fantastic, and it's a lot of people's favorite Tex Murphy game because it's the most well-known. Pandora may not be as well-known as Under a Killing Moon because it didn't technically break as much ground, but what it did was take Under a Killing Moon and refine it in every possible way. And that was thanks to Adrian Carr's involvement as a director, Chris Jones's experience as an actor, and Aaron Connor's development as a writer. I think that all conglomerated in this phenomenal offering. And not only that, it was multiple endings, multiple gameplay parts, and the mood and the style of it was just absolutely phenomenal. That's why it's a favorite of mine. It's a favorite of Chris Jones's as well. And that's why when we sat in a meeting room and during our lunch break at True Golf / Big Finish Games, we spent a week's worth of lunch breaks just playing through it together, refreshing our memory on what made it such a classic game. So it still is to this day most of, I guess, Big Finish Games / Access Software's favorite titles in the Tex Murphy series.
Definitely.
Now, how is it you came to be involved with not Big Finish? I get True Golf, I guess it was at the time. Like, did you apply? Was there a job opening? Did you meet them at a convention? How did that?
Well, okay, so rewinding back to Big Finish. So when the Tesla Effect Kickstarter was in full effect and they had agreed to bring me aboard to do visual effects and compositing and editing and special effects on that, I moved over to Salt Lake City and worked on that for the duration right up until its release. And rather than send me home, I, of course, naturally had ambitions to maintain and pursue my career here in the US. And so they said, well, you know, Big Finish Games only exists during the time as that we're working on Tex Murphy. Every other time, it's True Golf, and we're making golf software and simulators. So they said, if you have an interest in taking your skill set over to that realm as well, we'd be more than happy to keep you aboard. And that's what I did. I transitioned over to work on there. So I learned programming, I learned simulation, I learned, all these aspects of software program that went beyond the discipline of just pre-rendered visual effects and video. And it just got to a stage where now, I can confidently say that I know my way around C#. I know my way around the Unity engine, a little bit of the Unreal Engine, some of the proprietary software that they had in-house for True Golf. It was both educational as well as developmental for me. And that's kind of how I maintained involvement with True Golf and then by proxy, Tex Murphy throughout the time.
So what exactly is a visual effects supervisor. What did you do for Tesla effects?
Yeah, it sounds impressive. I have no idea what it means.
So the visual effects supervisor was there throughout the entire shoot to ensure that, the setups, like I worked very closely with the director of photography, Greg, Greg Green, and worked closely with him to ensure that the setups and the shots were very visual effects aware for things like motion tracking, for blocking, for spacing. There's a big gag about Matt's balls that goes around a lot, and it just basically means those little ping pong balls you see in a lot of mocap and tracking environments. Like, my responsibility was to ensure they were properly set up and everything was measured so that when it's shot, when we bring it into the compositing stage, we can stage it all within these 3D environments as well. So, and then essentially working with all of our visual effects artists, which was me and one other person, to basically ensure the look and feel of everything, VFX, compositing, special effects, 3D design, rendering, the whole thing was consistent and, more importantly, to style.
Makes sense. So, okay, obviously Tesla Effect was at least relatively successful, but the next Tex Murphy project, not quite so much. Tell us a little bit about Poison Pawn and what part you didn't start out in your neck of the woods, but you kind of came on, and then I have no idea what ended up happening to it. So tell us about it.
Yeah, of course. A hugely talented sort of Tex Murphy fan and 3D environment artist named Holger out of Germany came up with the initiative to remaster Overseer, because Overseer was one of the most difficult to get run on modern PCs. I think even though it's available on GOG and Steam, there are still some caveats to actually getting it running well. So we came up with this wonderful initiative to do a remaster, and he actually reached out to me fairly early, and he said, "Love the work you did on Tesla Effect. Could you try your hand at remastering the video and maybe redoing the visual effects there and giving us some nice video footage?" So I jumped on board to assist Holger, and then worked with other talented people like Darren and Karen, programmer and artist respectively. And the project was looking excellent. And then at one point, it was looking so fantastic that it naturally caught the attention of Chris Jones and Aaron Connors, who wanted to sort of throw their hat in the ring, so to speak, and offer additional resources, guidance, etc., and then perhaps even make it bigger than just a remake, evolve it into something that was a canon continuation, because Aaron always thought Overseer was a bit of a rush job, and it was. Intel commissioned the project to be done over the course of only, I think, 9 months to produce it. So there are a lot of things that Aaron wanted to do with it but never got a chance, and so he approached Holger, who was the project manager, and said, "Can we evolve this with your permission?" And Holger said, "Yes, let's do it." And then unfortunately at some point, because it was a departure from just a remake, which the team was already very passionate about, there was just certain sort of misalignments between what the team was excited about doing and how Aaron saw it, particularly within the confines of the small scale of the team. And, it just fizzled out as a result of that. So it was not a result of anything sinister along those lines. It was just a matter of differing opinions, and the changing of directives kind of caused a bit of a rift that meant it just eventually got sunset as a project. So it's unfortunate, but huge testament to the wonderful work that was done on it. I mean, we've seen a lot of screenshots and videos. Hugely talented people, and myself included, do wish everyone who was on that project the best with whatever the future endeavors have in store for them.
Yeah, it's too bad. I was really looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that it's been sunset. Now, we know the Big Finish Games is no longer a part of it, but in your knowledge, are they still actively trying to produce and make this game?
Unfortunately, I couldn't answer that question because, I went with Big Finish Games because that I was part of their team when we kind of stepped back from it. And while we can say we technically handed the reins to them, ultimately, we don't know whether or not it's going to be continued or anything. I mean, it seems unlikely. That's the only thing I can say. A lot of work was put into it, but I can't speak on behalf of them because, like I said, we kind of went our separate ways, not back to back, walked in opposite directions. Just they moved on to their new endeavors, and we did with ours.
Yeah, that's why I asked if it's in your knowledge, if you knew, because I reached out. couldn't find anything else that was going on. I haven't heard anything since then, which is really disappointing. I mean, there's so much. It's beautiful. Everything that was put out it's gorgeous, a gorgeous piece of art.
Most Tex Murphy fans would gladly like take a step. Okay, we thought it was going to be this bigger thing, but hey, we'll gladly step back and take the smaller thing that was originally planned. So
give me an episode.
I think the catch with that was the biggest catch with those, and the biggest pain point was because there were so many differences with the new directive that the no pun intended, the new directive the project took, that a lot of what would have enabled the team to revert back to just a remake of Overseer had already kind of been shelved, or enough time had passed where it would need to have a pretty significant overhaul to bring it up to speed anyway, because the team was very progressive about keeping it up to date with the latest tech. And when the new directive pushed it in this direction, changing it to go back to that direction was going to be a tough sell for them.
Yeah, I could totally get where you're at.
Yeah. So speaking of a lot of work going into things, apparently, as you mentioned earlier, you did a whole lot of work on remastering the Pandora Directive. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, as I said, it was one of those key games that everyone within Access Software thought was just this wonderful, benchmark of what we believe is the perfect Tex Murphy game. And we wanted to present that to new audiences, but also, reward fans for their loyalty, for being Tex Murphy fans. And so the Pandora Directive project came about because for the longest time, the ability to upscale, and a lot of people from Sierra will attest to this, if you're relying on only what the output of the game was, your options for remastering content is very limited. And we were very fortunate that people like Doug Vandergrift and Dave Brown were adamant on preserving those original Pandora Directive tapes. And so their tenacity and their dedication to preserving those opened up the door to have us go back and recapture those tapes using the latest in modern technology. And it wasn't until AI upscaling had gotten so good that I grabbed one of these tapes, threw it through the algorithms, tweaked it a little bit, and we looked at it and said, holy crap, this stuff can look like it was shot yesterday at 4K at 60 frames a second. Like, this is a real possibility. And so did some tests, and then Chris Jones said, yeah, I think this is definitely a possibility. And so we committed to, once again, as a passion project, because True Golf will always be the primary directive for the company as a whole, but as a passion project between Doug Vandergrift, myself, Chris Jones, and Aaron Connors, we would dedicate any spare time that we had to bringing the Pandora Directive to an anniversary. And we joke, we said, the announcement happened on the 25th anniversary, but maybe it's like a Naked Gun thing. We'll call it Pandora Directive 33 and a third. Something like that. So, yeah.
So we first talked about this, you and I, a couple of years ago now, and you mentioned that this is something that you folks had planned on doing during your spare time. Obviously you had your priorities, your tiers. Now you're no longer working on that project. Can you speak on behalf of that project at all? Where do we stand at this point?
The remaster? No, so I am still working. Like, I still have tasks to do, and are currently in progress for the video upscaling process. We have some really excellent articles that I wrote that detail it. If you go to bigfinishgames.com/news, there's a lot of articles that go into detail as to what's involved in the upscaling process. Now, Doug Vandergrift, in parallel to me doing that, has been remaking the environments, and we've had some articles showcasing those as well. And he's made really good progress. He's made most of them, in fact, with the only ones still work in progress are the ones that are attached and Chandler Avenue itself. But all the locations he's put a lot of effort into. But in terms of my responsibilities, Chris Jones, even though I no longer work specifically at Big Finish Games, has allowed me to maintain my connection to the equipment that I'm using to do the upscaling. And the video upscaling is currently in its third pass. Our first pass was generally seeing what AI could do. Second pass was tweaking it, seeing what else it could do. And then the third pass was being the remote. I don't want to get too technical here because, once again, it's a whole other podcast. Our third pass has involved a lot of command line tweaking, custom shader programming, all that kind of stuff to ensure that we've properly deinterlaced the source footage and upscale it at its best possible way. And I mean, we're seeing some results that literally you could swear was shot yesterday in 4K. It's phenomenal, but it takes a long time to process. Just to give you a general idea, the machine I've been using, which is a huge beast, a 16-core, hyper-threaded RTX 3090 graphics card, 128 gigabytes of RAM, 38 terabytes of storage, has been rendering non-stop for 18 months on this content.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea of how involved this is. And so I keep an eye on it. And when it's done, we will then visit the next step of the remastering process. And that is, speaking of which, Adrian Carr has already completed his new edit of the entire game. And so I will take his low resolution proxies that he edited with, switch them out with the high resolution upscale 4K versions, and then we can start exploring Doug's new environments, compositing the actors into those, and getting the new 4K video out. That will be the next step. But as was already alluded to, it's one of those things that Doug, myself, Chris Jones are just dedicating some spare time to at the moment.
So it's going to take time. We know that, but you can officially now look at all of us and say, don't worry. Even though you stepped away, there has been some concerns. Oh, is it squashed? Now you can squash those concerns. Thank you so much for doing so.
I won't say don't worry. I mean, we're always going to worry about these sort of things.
But you leaving's not stopping the project.
No,
That's a
definitely
big
was
concern.
not a hard stop on the project. And as I said, I mentioned on one of the Tex Murphy fan community, I said, as long as Doug Vandergrift and myself at least still draw breath, we will be dedicating some of our time to this project in one way or another.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm relieved to hear that. Okay, but so you've moved on to a new job, and you're still working on the Pandora Directive, but you've also got another pretty big gig going on behind the scenes. You're a burgeoning author. So maybe you'd like to tell us about your writing career that I'm sure is raring to take off.
I hope so. I mean, I found a real passion for it. And like, I had an idea. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi and, detective stories and all that kind of stuff. And while this isn't a specific detective story in general, I had a coworker who was just as into sci-fi and stories as I was. And we'd go to lunch every day while I was working in Sydney, and we'd just muse over sci-fi we were in love with and ideas for stories. And so I had this idea for a very epic kind of sci-fi story. It kind of spanned 3 stories, 3 movies, 3 books. It was a trilogy. And I had it in my head for like 10 years. And it had gotten to the point where unless I started writing this down, it was going to disappear. And so to me, writing was always something I imagine you retired onto a riverbed with a typewriter and kind of like that kind of stuff. It was this huge commitment. So I never imagined, who has time to write? And then I do a lot of commission work. And for the first time in a very long time, I finished a work day and I didn't have a single piece of commission work to do. And it was actually my birthday, 2020. And I sat down and I thought, I'll give it a shot writing this story. And within the space of, I believe it was 4 weeks, I looked at the word count and it had hit 120,000 words over the course of about 4 weeks. It was just vomiting out onto this page. And I thought, okay, I think I can do this. I really think I could do it. And it was mainly I was able to produce it that quickly. I'm not claiming it's any good or a masterpiece by any stretch of the means, but because it had an idea that had percolated for so long, it kind of came out very quickly. And so I gave it to some very keen beta readers. One of them was Aaron Connors, of course, naturally, and some other people. Yeah, and I said, would you mind reading this? And please be honest, I benefit not from being told it's fantastic or whatever. If you want me to take a hike, kid, and try something else, please let me know, because it's a time investment. And much to my surprise, the vast majority of the beta readers turned around and said, this is a fantastic story. You need to pursue this. And so as of today, I have written part 2. of this story, and I'm currently in the process of trying to navigate the traditional publishing route. And I've had some success. I was able to secure quite early on some agency interest and representation,
Big.
and subsequently am now trying to navigate the very crowded realm of traditional publishing. So, you know, uh, we've had discussions as well offline about this writing in general. It's a huge gauntlet
Yeah.
to navigate, and so I'm super excited about it. And if it's successful enough, I'd love to pursue this on more of a full-time basis because I enjoy writing a lot.
Well, maybe you can just kind of casually touch bases on what that gauntlet is. What do you figure is the hardest part that you engage in when writing? Structure, time? What do you have a hard time with?
I think the hardest part of writing for me would most likely be, I guess pacing is one of the things that's extremely difficult because when you have a lot of ideas for a story in your head, like usually like with the first book and the second book, you have a very good idea of what happens at the beginning, what happens in the middle, what happens in the end, and then finding something that links it all together. But more importantly, finding something that has the right type of lulls in the right place. That's one of the things I certainly struggle with, definitely in a writing sense. One of the things I don't necessarily struggle with, because I have Tex Murphy and Aaron Connors to thank for this, is dialogue. I mean, who better of a dialogue writer than Aaron Connors? I mean, his work is absolutely phenomenal. And when he was reading some of my books, he's like, I could see where you got some of these ideas from.
That's so hard to nail, and especially for a new writer, it's to nail like efficient and still informative dialogue.
Exactly. But I tell you what, the publishing industry in itself. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are writing as well, and it's also been inspiring to watch a lot of my friends who also didn't think themselves as to be writers in general get inspired by, Aaron Connors' work and other writers' work. It's self-publishing definitely has opened the doors to a lot of people who have fantastic stories to tell and they want to get it out there.
So are you like still actively writing? Are you kind of in a lull period, or how is that coming along? Now that you're back working, a new job and everything.
No, true. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's in a lull at the moment. Like I said, I only just very recently finished volume 2 of the trilogy. Now, volume 1 has reached a point where, I kind of want to fish it around out there. Volume 2 was kind of like a first draft, early draft. It had its beta readers check it out. And now I've received enough feedback to actually engage in a rewrite and an edit of that one. And so I'm in a lull in the sense that I'm still refining number 2 before I then kick off with number 3.
How interesting. Yeah, see, we're in the process of writing our second. We're now 78,000 words in, and we find ourselves, because we're putting out 3. We've been suggested to put 3 of them out, so it shows that we have a track record of pushing. But we keep finding ourselves with, okay, 2 is, we're so deep into 2 that now we're going back and changing 1, which, it seems like it's one large book or something, but it just creates that so much more like havoc. And okay, now what am I going to do to get it right in number 2? It's just a big old squash, but it is something that is super fun and passionate about. So this is an awesome conversation. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more about adventure games. You guys, do you have any more questions for him at this part regarding Matt? Before we move on to the next segment, Jack.
I was going to ask one last thing. If you have sort of any, influential writers that you kind of, obviously this is your own vision, but and Aaron Connors and Chris Jones had an impact on you sort of dialogue wise, but in terms of just sort of general sci-fi, thematics and stuff like that, anybody really stand out for you?
Sure. You know, funnily enough, for all the writing I want to do, I'm not a massive reader. Like I read, but I wouldn't call myself a massive consumer. And so, but you know, I'm a huge fan of James S. A. Corey with the Expanse series and everything like that. And so, I love the style. I love, I love the story. I love the series that was based off of it. And so, I love kind of a lot of sort of progressive sci-fi, but I also like traditional adventure storytelling, golden age of adventure, kind of Asimov style storytelling. That's definitely something I align with and I'm most passionate about. Because as exciting and modern as progressive sci-fi is, there's something about the traditional golden age stories that really appeal to me.
Do you see yourself playing Telltale's The Expanse story that's coming up?
Oh, I hope so. I was just the Expanse series was just a phenomenal TV series, and to me, it just was like it really grew in excitement, and then at one point, it's just like it's gone, it's over,
Yeah.
it's all done, over and done with, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, no, I need more.
Yeah, there's a void there now.
Yes, there is.
Well, I guess that kind of does help us go into our next segment, where we'll talk a little bit about adventure games. So we'll talk about Matt's opinions on adventure games. So I do have a quick question for you. Now that you have been in the industry, you've been helping create adventure games, does that kind of make you less of a game player now and more of a worker?
Oh no, I still play games. Most recent one I played was Stray. That was a lot of
You did?
fun. It was a really cute game. What else? I recently shelled out to get a PS VR 2 because I'm willing to give VR another try now that PlayStation has made it a little bit more convenient. I mean, I always wanted to give VR a try. I just hated the fact that every time I plugged it in, I'd have like 3 hours worth of firmware updates and resetting up the tracking nodes every time I wanted to, I don't know, like play 15 minutes of Beat Saber. So I'm interested to see how VR is going on that sense. But yeah, I mean, I recently replayed the Mass Effect trilogy for like the 5th time in the last 2 years,
Oh,
just,
wow.
yeah, I still play games. It's just hard for me to kind of look at them in the same light. So.
This isn't about adventure games per se, but it's certainly fitting since you've been working on the Pandora Directive, which just remasters in general. I obviously the Pandora Directive is sort of the perfect project to remaster, as you've said. You can take these, old, tiny little film clips and recreate them in sort of modern shot yesterday 4K. So that's kind of perfect. But in general, I've kind of got a negative feeling about remasters. So I just wanted to get both of your opinions on what you thought of remasters in general. They're just becoming, more and more frequent. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it just a cheap cash in? Where are we at with remasters?
I think it highly depends on the motivation for the remaster. I think that in order for a remaster successful, it needs the developer's passion for the right reasons to remaster content has to shine through in the remaster itself. Like, gamers are not stupid. They know what a cash grab is and they know what a passion project is. And people need to give gamers a lot more credit than they are. And in the sense that gamers will know when a remaster is something that the developer said, no, we love this and we want more people to love this. That's what a good remaster is. One that's just like, hey, big company gets involved and says, hey, executive CEO remembers this game. He remembers it made money. Maybe we can make money again. Like, that's when I believe the purpose of a remaster can be a little bit maligned. And so I think if it's done with passion, like, let me give you an example. I will play every single Myst remaster they make till the end of time because I know Rand and that team are so darn passionate about Myst. And you can see it in all of those ones. The latest one, like, I even commented to Rand one time. I said, Rand, I will play every single remake you make because you are so excited about it every time. Whereas some of them are just quite obviously just there to remind you something existed.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
You mean like Myst, Real Myst, Myst Masterpiece, Masterpiece
Real-
3D
Real Myst
edition,
Masterpiece.
like yeah, Masterpiece
No,
on
wait.
VR.
No. You have Real Mist, and now it's Unreal Mist.
Oh, because
Because
it's
it's
a
made
whole
in the
new
Unreal
engine.
engine. Yeah. it's
Brilliant.
Unreal Mist.
Take my money. Here's another $20. You asked me, like, I have strong feelings, very much. I do think that some games absolutely need them. I think that there's some games such as Grim Fandango is a perfect example of a truly beneficial remaster. In some ways, even remakes. I like the idea of remakes more than remasters, but some of those, they needed them. Blade Runner, on the other hand, I mean, what did they do? If somebody could tell me what they did besides, change some video settings up a little bit, then that's a whole. Then you get the changes that are just, I think, are truly detrimental to the original art of the game. They adjust to modern standards and they take out certain types of things that because people are now inconvenienced, and they take away a lot of the art that the game originally gave us. And so, do I think it's a cash grab? Again, depends on who's putting it out, but in most cases, I do feel that it's just not a pretty situation. Hopefully we get Pandora Directive, and it's worth the 18 months of processing plus however long more it's going to take.
Plus however long, indeed.
Well, let me ask you, Jack, what do you think?
Grim Fandango remaster. One of the things, like, I love the Grim Fandango and the Full Throttle one as well, if we're on the topic of LucasArts. And I think it was a fantastic remaster. There is one thing I didn't like about that remaster is when the end credits rolled, the original music during the end credits used to be the track called Ninth Gate or Ninth Heaven. That nice kind of like that Deus de Muerta sort of tune. And to me, that was the most gorgeous, melancholy way to end Grim Fandango. And in the remaster, everything was perfect as it was, except the new end credits track was that dun 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 dun. It was way too fanfare to end a game that had a melancholy drop. And I remember turning to the person next to me saying, I didn't know they had changed the track. I'm like, oh, this is the most bone-chilling part. Like, this is so melancholy. You'll love this. And as the credits rolled, the fanfare smacked, and I'm just like, okay, that caught me totally off guard. Sorry, that was a tangent, but I just had to say that.
So, Jack, you asked the question. You give us your answer.
Oh man, like I'm all over the place. I'm like on one hand, but on the other hand, like you need an octopus worth of hands to cover all my opinions on the matter. I'm kind of sour on them. I don't really like replaying games anyway, so it kind of irks me that developers are putting so much energy and effort into remastering games that we already have and generally don't need to be remastered. I haven't played Full Throttle Remastered, but I mean, it was still an awesome game. Did we really need to have it remastered? But then again, and I use the phrase cash grab, but is even a cash grab necessarily a bad thing? I mean, if remastering Full Throttle and Grim Fandango is what kept Double Fine alive to give us Psychonauts 2, then, that's an important thing too. Like, they've got to deal with financial reality. So, I mean, I see it from both sides. I just kind of, I don't know.
Well, Grim Fandango needed it.
Paying for the privilege of replaying a slightly different version of the game that I already have and loved, and but I feel like I'm missing out if I don't play the new one, right? So.
Well, Grim Fandango, it needed it. It had that terrible 3D keyboard controls, and then it went to point and click, which was beautiful. Full Throttle, I didn't think it needed it all because it had the voices already. And it was all
Scum VM, so you could easily emulate it. Yeah.
And now I think with the Monkey Islands remasters and gave us voices, which I think was a big deal. I think that's something that kind of brought the old generation into the new. We could introduce these wonderful games to our children or however. So Yeah, certainly, it depends on the game. I think that's the best way to answer it.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say that I played all of the new Grim Fandango with the original tank controls? It
was rough, was it?
Yeah, no, it was fine, and it was funny because I just did it naturally, instinctively, because I'd played it so many times. I'd got used to playing it with tank controls.
Yeah.
And when I'd finished the game, this little achievement slides in, and it says, "The right way. Tim Schafer insisted we put this achievement in here." That was literally the achievement that I got for playing the whole game with tank controls, which was fantastic. But yeah, remasters once again could be a whole other podcast topic.
Yeah.
Well, we've already gone 50 minutes. I got to ask you before we go into our final closing, I want to know what your favorite non-Tex Murphy adventure games are. Just run through a few of them.
Yeah, so Grim Fandango is definitely right up there at the top. I really enjoyed Fade to Black. That was really, really good. That's going out the classic. I remember trying to play that on a 486 and still loving the hell out of it, even though
DX25.
It was a DX50, so it wasn't terrible, but good enough for Under a Killing Moon, but not the Pandora Directive.
Right.
What other adventure games is it's a lot of the LucasArts stuff. I was never a huge Sierra fan, funnily enough, but I did enjoy Police Quest. I really love the Police Quest games. That was an excellent series. But never really got into many other of those ones. And then, if we want to get into sort of like more modern adventure games, I don't know. When it comes to modern games, I guess I'm a huge fan of Mass Effect and those ones. But like I said, if I had a top 5 list that I had to exclude Tex Murphy from for obvious reasons, it would most certainly be, Grim Fandango Full Throttle, Fade to Black, Myst, and the Myst series. I'm all roping into one here. What else was there? Oh God, I'm blanking on the name, but it's so popular. Journeyman Project games.
You talk about node-based. I thought you didn't like node-based games.
I didn't say I didn't like node-based.
Oh, that's true.
I
You
said
didn't.
not real-time ruined node-based games for me.
You did mention Myst too. You do like Myst.
And he does like sci-fi.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, those will be some of my favorite adventure games from that same era. If I were to exclude Tex Murphy from it all.
If there was a Hall of Fame, adventure game Hall of Fame, would you put Chris Jones in there as Tex Murphy and creator of Tex Murphy?
I would totally put Chris Jones in there as Tex Murphy. I mean, he still is to this day. No. This may have changed with the new Monkey Island. So for the longest time, Guybrush Threepwood had a Guinness World Record for the longest running adventure game character, which
held his breath.
Which Tex Murphy fans were up in a rage about, because if you go to the Tex Murphy wiki, you'll see the whole controversy there. And basically, Tex Murphy technically is a longer running protagonist, and unfortunately, he was not awarded the Guinness World Record for the longest running adventure game protagonist because they considered Tesla Effect as a remaster. They said that he's disqualified because Tesla Effect is not a canon continuation, and everyone was just like, yeah, it is. And then so what happened was it says, no, it's not a canon continuation. And so then there was another Guinness World Record. So the longest wait between two games in an adventure game series. And it should have gone to Tex Murphy for Overseer to Tesla Effect. But that also went to Guybrush Threepwood. No ill will towards Guybrush at all. I love the character. But it's like, that should have gone to Tex. And they said, oh, no, it wasn't that. It was something that contradicted the first Guinness World Record that disqualified Tex Murphy from that one as well. So both of them erroneously went to Guybrush Threepwood, and Guinness was just like, nah, it is what it is, and that kind of thing. Although I must say that with the new Monkey Island, he can probably have that back now.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, yeah, unless we end up getting another Tex Murphy game coming up.
That's right.
Later on. Yeah, we'll just have
That's
to
a good motivator as any.
Jack, I threw 2 extra questions on there. Do you have another one that you want to throw in?
No, I mean, I think like we did Matt's top 5 adventure games. I think we better get to our own top 5 if we're gonna wrap this up in under 2 hours.
Fictional detectives. We're going to go around the room and we're going to do our top 5 fictional detectives. Could be movies, video games, books. So, Matt's the guest. We're going to let you go first, my friend. What is your 5 or 1? Could be any of them. Top 5.
Depends. Can I put Tex Murphy in there, or do I have to exclude him?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
You probably should.
For the sake of fun, I will put him in there, but I'll also exclude him, and I'll give you 5 more. So
Okay.
6 in total.
We'll go one at a time. We'll go around the room.
Yeah, okay. So first off, let's hit up TV. I'm a huge fan of Columbo. I love Columbo. I think Peter Falk is a fantastic actor, and I really loved Columbo a lot.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a Lucius Pendergrass from the Pendergrass novel, Pendergrass series. So he's an FBI agent, eccentric, brilliant, much like Sherlock Holmes.
And so is my first one. This is sort of low-hanging fruit, but I got to go with Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. I love that little Belgian, man. He was so funny. Like, to me, what separated him from a lot of the other brilliant detectives is he always seemed to have a little twinkle in his eye, or at least that's how I read him. Oh, and I should say this only applies to the books. I've never liked or never been satisfied with a TV or movie version of him, but because I always read him differently than any portrayal I've ever seen. So I'm still waiting for the perfect Poirot on screen.
Great
Wonderful.
choice.
Next up, I would say I wanted to put a female detective in there. And originally I was going to say Irene Adler. I know she's not technically a detective. I'm a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes, and I love the fact that she kind of outwitted him a bunch of times. But then another fantastic female detective crossed my mind, and that was Jessica Fletcher. Murder, She Wrote
Murder,
series.
She Wrote. Oh, I love it.
Absolutely, just her demeanor and everything, and just how calm and collected and smart she was. I used to love watching that series with my mom.
Did Irene Adler actually outwit Sherlock, or was Sherlock just blinded by his infatuation with her?
That's probably her strength, isn't it?
Yeah. That's true. She uses that. Okay.
Absolutely.
My next one's going to be Encyclopedia Brown. Now, tell me you guys remember these books as youth. Oh, please tell me.
I remember encyclopedias.
Encyclopedia
Brown.
I remember the color brown. I don't remember the two of them ever going together.
Less Facebook, more book, Jack. No, I'm kidding. He's not even a Facebook guy. No,
I
Encyclopedia
remember
Brown.
Wikipedia Blue. Like,
This is a youth series. He's like a 12-year-old preteen. He'd solve all the crimes around his city. His father was a detective and everything. I read every one. Oh man, I was addicted. Encyclopedia Brown.
Wow. Okay. This was not on my list, but it reminds me kind of the Hardy Boys. When I was a kid, I was like right into them. Probably another age gap thing. I might have been a little.
It's like the Hardy Boys, but just younger. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cheesier.
My next one is pretty much as far away from the brilliant detective as you could possibly get. It is Inspector Jacques Clouseau, starring Peter Sellers. I mean, outside of Chris Jones and Tex Murphy, has there ever been a more perfect marriage of actor and role than Sellers and Clouseau? Just amazing stuff.
Agreed.
if you love him so much, why don't you get a room?
A what? Oh, a room. That's it.
Not now.
Lovely. Okay, here's a blast from some 80s, early 90s here. Remington Steele.
Yes.
Pierce Brosnan before he was GoldenEye and James Bond. So funnily enough, I didn't discover Remington Steele until I discovered Brosnan's James Bond, who is one of my, now I will say he's one of my favorite ones only because his was the first one that exposed me to James Bond given my age. I know he's not the best by many stretches there, but then I went and said, I want to see more of this guy because he's so suave. And then Remington Steele, I was just like, this is actually pretty exciting as a detective.
Oh man. Okay. Can we count 007 as a detective? I mean, he does detect, right? No? Okay. All right. I'm pushing it here.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go with.
Save it for your fifth. If you know, save it for your desperation move if you need one.
All right. I'm going to go with Jack Reacher.
Oh, of course.
Oh, Jack Reacher, man. He's a brilliant military policeman, especially in a lot of the prequel books from Lee Child. Just absolutely on it. He has everything you want out of a tough guy. He's quick-witted, and he follows it up. Love it.
Good choice. That's that's a sort of book Jack Reacher, right? Not movie Jack Reacher, because
they've not made any movies based off his military police days. He's mostly just the guy who roams around the country in in the movies and some of the later books. So.
Okay, I'm not really a big sitcom guy, just because I think I could write most of them better in my sleep than we get on TV generally. But there's one sitcom, current-ish sitcom that I absolutely love is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I'm going with Jake Peralta.
Yes!
Again, played to perfection by Andy Samberg. Love that guy. He's so funny.
That was on my list. So good.
Oh, sorry, man.
No, that's great.
Gotta think of a new one now.
No, I've got a few more. That was a great one. I'm so glad that you thought of that. Okay.
All right, here's a name for you. See if you can tell me where it comes from. Inspector Frank Bumstead. You know the name?
I don't.
So, you know the movie Dark City?
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah, the one directed by Alex Price. So Inspector Frank Bumstead plays the detective in the movie Dark City, who works very initially tries to discover why John Murdoch, the main character, is a murderer. But there's something about John Murdoch that doesn't quite sit right with him. And why I love him as a detective is he, throughout the entire movie, can see the wood from the trees. He knows that there's something not right about this murderer, or who everyone thinks is a murderer, and he's just about the only one who can kind of see through that there's something sinister going on with the city in general. And he's just noir as heck, kind of like Tex Murphy. He also plays the accordion in his spare time. Just a fantastic detective.
Forgotten about that. Do you remember who the actor is? I can't play him.
Yeah, John Hurt.
Oh, it's John Hurt.
William Hurt. Sorry, I get my Hurts mixed up. William Hurt, not John Hurt.
I call him Bill. Oh man, so since Jack took one that I thought there was zero chance that any of you were going to take.
I love spoilers.
I might just have to take one that I assumed that Jack would have taken by now. Batman.
Good work.
Batman.
Oh yeah, it's on my list, but
is it really
below my 5?
Okay. So. Okay, good. Now I don't feel so bad. I had to get Batman in there. All right, Batman. Yeah.
World's greatest detective, man.
For sure.
I almost totally spaced when I was thinking of detectives, but then I went, oh yeah, Batman, of course. I mean, he's just so often portrayed as the brooding superhero. You kind of forget the detective origins. But is it me?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Okay, another TV show. It's going back a little ways. I'm going to go with Lenny Briscoe of Law and Order. Again, played to perfection by the wonderful but late Jerry Orbach. So just great character.
All right.
I think this is my 5th one, and let's stick around with TV. Robert Gorin from Law and Order Criminal Intent. So absolutely loved his in-your-face style. I never pronounce his last name correct. Vincent D'Onofrio or D'Onofrio. I don't never get his name pronunciation right. But I always loved how witty he was, and it was one of the very few Law and Order series that told you exactly what happened. So you got the whole Hitchcock effect of knowing more than anyone else does, and you get to kind of see how he comes to his conclusions. And he was so in your face. Perfect detective in my opinion.
Okay, and since Sherlock Holmes has not been brought up, I'm going to go with Sherlock Holmes, but the BBC Sherlock Holmes. What is it? Cumberbatch or what's that actor's name?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict
Cumberbatch.
British name ever.
Words. Excellent, better day. Yeah, I think that is the best interpretation outside of Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. is just everything he does is just so brilliant. But if I'm gonna go like a little bit further down the line, I'm gonna go with BBC's Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch is just phenomenal. I loved him in The Imitation Game as well. Just a phenomenal actor.
Yeah, he's great in everything. All right, since we're a bunch of gamers, I had to include at least one gaming detective. Although I guess Poirot counts as a gaming detective too, because there are a few actors in the game. But I am going to go, and assuming Tex Murphy was already off the board, I'm going to go with Detective Francis McQueen from The Dark Side Detective. Although I have to admit, this is really kind of a twin deal, him and Officer Dooley, because to me, they're a package deal. One without the other is not nearly as interesting or effective, but the two of them as a pair, they're just absolutely hilarious. Gotta love McQueen and Dooley.
Well, there you go. Yeah. All right. So we went around the room. We threw out all of our favorite fictional detectives. And Tex Murphy, obviously, that goes without saying. Tex Murphy's in there. And so
amazing.
Sub question. We mentioned Batman. We all agreed Batman was cool, right? Which Batman? Which Batman is the first one pops to your head? Oh, gotta go Christian
Adam
Bale,
West.
Right? Gotta go. Oh yeah. Well, I mean that is actually the first one that pops in my head, but not the coolest. I'm gonna go with Christian Bale. Oh, Jack, this is such an interesting question for Jack. He's straining.
I am, yeah.
Jack is a huge comic book guy.
No, I'm gonna go last. Let's
oh yeah, okay. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I would put Christian Bale in there. I have a soft spot for anyone who can use shark repellent in a can.
Yeah.
So Adam West has kind of like my allegiance there, but no, I think I'm with you there.
Okay. I have the perfect answer and I can't think of the guy's name. He is the voice actor for the animated Batman cartoon. Everyone loves him. I'm going to kick myself later for not remembering his name.
You're not talking about Mark Hamill, are you?
No, he was the Joker.
He's the Joker, right? Yeah.
Joker, but
okay. Well, give us one that you can think of without.
Oh, I got to go with Christian Bale too. He's not perfect by any means, but better than Keaton, definitely better than Adam West. Although, yeah, I grew up on those corny old shows too. So.
Yeah. No love for Ben Affleck, huh?
Oh, totally forgot. Yeah, none for. I'm way too tired tonight. This is the new guy that did the Batman series, the young guy.
All right. Well, you tell.
Pattinson.
Pattinson, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. He's the voice in the animated series.
No. He's the new.
But he's the new.
Okay.
I was just throwing out other people that played the role. So.
Okay.
Oh, do I get a special mention? It just popped into my head, fictional detective.
Do it.
Did you guys ever play the game Observer?
No.
The Observer game? Rutger Hauer did the voice actor to the main detective in the Observer game. I'm trying to remember what his name was. But yeah, Rutger Hauer did the voice for Observer is a cyberpunky, very dystopian, fantastically moody adventure game, detective game. I don't know who his character is in the story though. But honorable mention.
Conroy is the name. Sorry to interrupt, but Kevin Conroy is the name I was trying to think of.
Kevin Conroy. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to have to edit that in later on in the show. So yeah, okay. Well, there you go, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We can officially call you friend of the show. This is the third time that you have either been on this particular podcast. I guess we did our interview together a while back ago in another organization, and also we did our debut, the 12-hour. Yeah. So Matt, we really appreciate you. Where can we find you?
Let's see. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I am mostly socially. That's probably the best one, I guess. I'm not a huge social person unless I have really any good news to share. But on Twitter at Mat Von Rhoon is probably your closest bet. And I promise to keep people as updated as I can with regards to Tex Murphy, as well as the writing exploits and anything else related to adventures and this kind of stuff in general.
And Matt, we really appreciate you. Jack, I almost called Jack Matt. Well, I did actually, but I adjusted. Jack,
I was going to let it slide, but you gave yourself away.
This has been a long day, man.
It has been.
And I need to eat so bad. You mentioned our 33 games that's coming up. Anything else that we should be excited about at Adventure Game Hotspot?
Things next week are a little bit up in the air. Definitely, we got a full slate of reviews coming. So I think we're probably going to lead with one called Paper Ghost Stories, 7 p.m. It's a really interesting sort of cardboard cutout character drama game. And then there's sort of a abandoned city amnesiac protagonist called Eden Gate, The Edge of Life. So those are coming up. Whether those are next week, I'm not sure. But it's all about the top 33.
And you can find Jack over at adventuregamehotspot.com. He's always over there. He lives there. You can find us anywhere where you consume your podcasts. This is the Adventure Game Hotspot podcast. And we're also on YouTube. So look for us over there. Like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Emphasis on the yada. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. As always, thank you for watching and listening. Let us know if you enjoyed it. Let us know if you have any questions down in the comments below. And we'll see you in the next video.
So long.
See ya.